Before we go into the code part, I just want to point out, if you just visualize, let's say a camera lens, and your camera lens is just this square of this first artboard. The concept is we take our film strip and we move our film strip into the lens one artboard at a time. Okay? And depending on the speed which we move the artboard, that will directly influence the speed of our animation. Now keep in mind there's also the concepts of how many frames you have, how much distance an element is moving, okay, to create to create velocity within an animation also, okay? So you have the distance something moves over X amount of time, which both correlate to the velocity which you can create. Okay, now with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at our code. So I'm just going to point out that I created a div, and I placed this div before the closing section where my lyrics are, okay? And we're going to use class astronaut, and then we're going to create our rule for our astronaut. I'm going to use absolute position. Well, I'm going to go ahead and use top and right positioning to get this in place. And I'm going to set my width 200 by 200. Now, remember in the previous demo, when we exported 300, the frames were 300 by 300. But when I exported, I sized mine down or scaled mine down to 200 on the height, which gave me a length of 2000. So I'm going to create this element which is 200 by 200 pixels square, and I'm purposely not doing this in rems because if I were to change the root scale or the root font size, then that size would be changed here, and that actually would mess up my animation. And you'll see here in a second how this frame can be affected. Okay, so let's go ahead, and we have our background image, and this happens to be my film strip. I called mine space entity film strip. And for the moment, we're going to set the background position at 0, 0. And let's not worry about the animation part, and we're not worried about the keyframes. We're going to fill that in and talk about that in a moment. But I have placed a border so we can see exactly what's going on. Okay, so let's go ahead and save, and we will take a look, and you'll see here is that border. Okay, so if I were to go back here, and we're now going to change the background position instead of 0, 0, okay, because what's happening is we're beginning to draw this film strip right here at 0 on the X and 0 on the Y. And what I want to do instead is I want to start my film strip. I want to go left, and we're going to go center. Okay, so let's just go ahead and take a look at what happens if we change this to left and then center. And then we'll save, and we're going to go here back to our preview, and let's see if anything moves around. Just kind of make a mental picture of where your astronaut is, and then we'll refresh. Okay, and everything should look the same. All right, now let's go back just so you get a sense of what's going on here. Let's take our left, and remember we are each frame is 200 pixels, so let's go negative 100 px, and we will save, and let's go ahead and update, and we'll take a look, and you'll see that film strip We've just moved it on the x-axis negative 100. Okay, so the way this is going to work eventually is we're going to move this image 200 pixels at a time. Okay, so it'll move in steps, 200, 200 more, 200 more. And we won't be tweening. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to have, for those of you that use, let's say, After Effects, we're going to change the frame interpolation to hold. Okay, so we're just going to move in chunks of 200 pixels at a time. So let's go back and let's go ahead and move this back to left, like so. Okay, and what we will do now is let's go ahead and on our animation, we'll keep astronaut, and I'm going to change this to 5 seconds for right now, and we're going to leave infinite, but we're going to get rid of normal and linear. Okay, so normal in the direction, and then linear would be our velocity. We're going to get rid of those, and what we'll do instead is we're going to set the steps to 10. Okay, now remember we have 10 frames, thus steps 10. Okay, our animation is going to happen in 5 seconds, and so I'm just going to change this to 5.0 seconds, like so. And now what it is we're going to step animate is the background position. So remember, my film strip is 2,000 pixels long. Okay, so what we're going to do is go up to our keyframes, and here's our link, if you will, astronaut, which is the name of our animation, which we have down here. So we're going to use our keyframe. We're going to set 100%, and then inside the curly braces, what we're going to do is set the background position. Okay. So our background position will be negative 200 px. Okay, so what we're going to do is in 10 steps, background, 2000, sorry. So our background position is going to move to negative 2000. So keep in mind, the film strip is 2,000 pixels long. Each frame is 200 pixels wide. So we have 10 steps. So in what we're going to do is in those 10 steps, we're going to move 200 pixels at a time. Okay, so you have to think about what is the total length and how many steps do you have. Okay, how many frames do you have within that total distance? Okay, so those frames equate to your steps. All right, so I believe we have everything here. Let's go ahead and save, and we'll refresh, and let's see what we have here. All right, so we have our astronaut just moving around, sort of floating, and that pattern is based off of whatever you come up within your film strip. Okay, so I mean, there's all kinds of things you could do with this. It's really limited by your own creativity. But if we go back, just so you see what's going on here, if we were to change the steps to 5, okay, let's change the steps to 5. So we're going to move this 2,000 in 5 steps, in half the steps. So we'll save. So we should see every other frame. So we'll go ahead and update. Now you're seeing every other frame. So it's a bit more of a jump, but it better sort of gets across that idea of frame interpolation and holding a frame in a program like After Effects. So let's go back and we will change our steps to, how about 20 steps? Okay, and we'll save and refresh. Okay, so now you're going to see you're moving half the distance of each frame. Okay. All right, so hopefully that gets the idea across to you. I'm going to go ahead and go back and change my frames to 10. And we'll go ahead and save. We'll get rid of this border. And then we'll take a look. And there you go. Using CSS Keyframes and step animation with a film strip to create your sequential animation.